I don't shop a lot now. I find myself I'm buying more like accessories as opposed to like actual clothing items.
Yeah.
But during COVID, because I was on lockdown for 5 months, I was just cooped up at home. I found that I shopped a lot there, so I really shopped a lot during lockdown. But surprisingly, I haven't. Maybe I've worn like one or two of those dresses that I bought. I have shoes that I haven't worn, but I think we all thought when things open up, like I'm gonna go out more often. I'm gonna wear this. I'm gonna wear that, and I haven't, sadly. I would go to the stores. I think because I was cooped up at home. So going to the mall was like a whole exciting thing for me personally. So I'd find myself physically going to the stores, looking what they have, looking at what they have, and just, yeah, going crazy basically. It was more like therapy, I guess. More like, yeah, more than boredom, because I think when I'm at work, I go to work, I come back, I'm tired. I don't have time to go to the shops and start wandering at the mall. But because I was at home and I didn't go anywhere, so going to the mall then was that thing for me where I'm like, oh, when things open up, this is what I'm going to wear. This is how I'm going to pair it. This is where I'm going to go out, you know. I think social media plays a huge role in fashion, obviously, because the more the fashion companies advertise, the more people buy, you know. So it's good for business in that sense. It is very much good for, and it's also good for us as consumers to see what is out there, you know, so that you also on trend. You don't really want to look like you just stepped out from the 80s or the 90s, you know. You want to look current, you want to look on trend, and you want to look stylish. So I think in that sense, it is good. But also I think then the bad part of it is that because things are changing so quickly, it may not be good for the pockets, honestly. Now, I think it puts people under unnecessary pressure sometimes to buy things which they may not necessarily need, but because like the trends and styles are changing up so quickly, then you're constantly like buying new things. And obviously, I think for the environment as well, because of the things have to be like overproduced in such a short space of time. I think I like mixing the classics, you know, with the current styles. Obviously, there are certain things that you see and you're like, you know, you can see that this thing won't last, you know. So obviously, I would skip. I'm like, I'm not wasting my money on that. But there are certain styles where you feel like, you know what? I think even after 2 years, I can still, it's in style now, but even after 2 years, I can still wear it. And rock it. Yeah, so I think with pieces like that, for me personally, I do buy them, but with other things, I do skip them. Yeah. No, it's definitely not infringing on our rights, but I think it is. It's making us more informed on what is good for the environment, what is not good for the environment. And it's making us just to pause and think, you know, is this a good fabric or is it not a good fabric? So I think in that sense, it's really just giving us more information and just making us to pause and think before adding that dress on that cart or just grabbing something off the rail. It gives us the opportunity to just pause and think. There are still people who will just say, you know what, I don't have time for that. Like, I'm just buying what I want to. Yeah. Also, you guys also talk about other things that people can do, you know, like thrifting or clothes swapping. So maybe you may also look more into those methods of getting new staples into your wardrobe as opposed to, you know, just going and just spending money.
COVID has put a lot of things into perspective, and, you know, more especially with the fashion and the shopping, I think it's made me realize I should take a step back and reassess my shopping practices. I'm more aware about what I want to get in terms of my shopping. So I don't just want to shop with that peacock mentality. I've become more intentional about what I want to buy and where I want to get my shopping done. So I think more especially, you know, during COVID, we've read and learned about how the environmental impact, you know, was reduced. So, for example, your carbon emissions was reduced, and then you've had less water pollution, and then you saw more of the marine life flourishing. So, you know, and you, I mean, we both know that the textile industry consumes a lot of water through its manufacturing processes. So I think all of that had made me realize that, you know, I want to contribute to this process of environmental sustainability. And also when it comes to fashion, that, you know, I should be more conscious about how I shop. Now at this point where I'm more intentional about what I want and where I get it from two perspectives. Maybe the first one might not necessarily be as relevant, but I'll mention it in any case. The two aspects I want to speak about is women, you know, who operate and who own sustainable fashion businesses. And then the second aspect would be women who are consumers of sustainable fashion. So I think for women in business who have these sustainable fashion businesses operating, you know, you've got to look at it from a governance perspective in terms of your fair labor practices, in terms of what you're producing, your conducive conditions for working. And I think more where sustainability is concerned, you've got to look at your ethical sourcing of fabrics, you know, going eco-friendly. And for example, you don't want to be using child labor in producing fabrics, reducing your environmental impact. So I think, you know, it's important to do some research, and, you know, these practices are mainstreaming now in sustainable fashion. So, you know, information is not readily available. You know, it's not like you could go to some central portal and get this information. You've got to do your homework before, you know, setting up and establishing your business practices for sustainable fashion. But I think on the other aspect where women are consumers of sustainable fashion, I think what has helped me is looking at the care label on garments. So for example, you could look at what is the percentage composition of the fabric. You could look at how much of recycled fiber content goes into producing the garment. Now, for example, the fleece that I'm wearing, it has, I think it's 37% recycled fiber. Wow. You know, what I love about it is that the care label makes a specific mention of stating think climate. I think it's these little things that go on the care labeling that makes a consumer you know, more aware about how they should be picking out their garments. In fact, I would think that it's had quite the opposite effect on dictating to women. I think now there's a greater awareness about sustainable fashion, and that women should be spending their money guilt-free, if I could use that term. And I actually don't think that there's any infringement on a woman's right. Also, you know, I mean, they're free to choose and decide. There's a broadened perspective on what they should choose and who they should choose from, who their suppliers should be. So I think, you know, also working in the environment that I am in, I think this then speaks to, you know, aspects and achieving the aspirations of the Consumer Protection Act, because as consumers, we have a right to choose and to select our suppliers. But I think more importantly, and I love the Constitution, you know, it's so progressive in that regard. And Section 24 of the Constitution speaks about the environment, and everyone has a right to have an environment that is not harmful to your well-being. And then it speaks about, you know, sustainable development and those aspects. So I love the fact that we have these rights already enshrined in our acts, in the Constitution. So, you know, we should then not feel as if this whole, you know, fashion, sustainable fashion is being imposed on. Look at the broader landscape, you know, not in terms of what I should be going and doing out there for my fashion, but also in terms of what governs my fashion sense. Where do my rights come from? So, I mean, as a consumer, this is what I would turn to, and also from a trade perspective, because you want to, for example, if you're operating your sustainable fashion business, you want to get a supplier who is, trading ethically.
Yeah.
So it's those components that, one should consider, in this whole broad landscape of sustainable fashion. My thinking and move towards this doesn't seem as if this is unrealistic. So more recently, I took it up a notch, and I'm now vegan. That has really broadened my perspective on everything relating to fashion and consumption of food. So I'm obviously more, as I stated before, I'm more conscious about my fashion choices, but I love the fact that I'm contributing to reducing the carbon footprint. And yes, I'm a small, fish in the big pond, but the atomic habits leads to big wins. So I'm glad that I can contribute in a small way to this whole, landscape of sustainable fashion. And, it's I don't think it's unrealistic at all, because for me, killing an animal for its hide doesn't make fashion sense. So, for example, I don't own any leather clothing except for a leather jacket that was gifted to me. So I wouldn't go out and buy leather because of that ethical perspective of fashion. I definitely subscribe to what this whole sustainable fashion aims to achieve. And I think it would really take an enormous effort by somebody to convince me otherwise that, it is unrealistic. Because in my terms, I think also, and having this awareness as a vegan, I definitely don't think that is unrealistic at all. Wow. I think, that point of introspection really digs deep into yourself to say, where do you want to take this? Like for me, I think just killing an animal, it's just doesn't help me. I think introspection is good, because then it informs your outward perspective, obviously. So that's really, I love the fact that, these are daily things that we can do to inform our choices. When we go into the shop, we do so unconsciously, but then when you look inwards, you realize, okay, the next time I visit the shop, this is what I need to get to reduce my carbon footprint, to work towards the sustainability aspect. Plastic packaging, for example, your clothing comes in plastic packaging or whatever, so you got, all those aspects. So for me, I love it when I see the labeling and the packaging, recyclable or reusing it. And or for example, you could repurpose, look at your fashion choices and think about how you could repurpose it when you tire off how it looks with that particular style. So I think those are small aspects that you could consider in the broader scheme of things.
So I've been an environmental and mining lawyer for 13 years now, and I actually wanted to study fashion design, but my parents said no. So I was watching Legally Blonde, and I thought, she's a lawyer and she's so stylish, so maybe I can marry the two that way. So I studied law, and I was really happy doing it, and particularly environmental law, because it is something new and exciting, and just something that you can actually see a change, and you can see your work becoming something. So seeing companies comply with things that impact the environment less. And then it was actually during lockdown that I was watching a lot of styling videos and various things on Instagram, and I started digging through my cupboard again, and I found my love and my passion for clothing again. It's never gone, but it was just highlighted during that period.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Exactly.
wow.
And I also had a moment where I thought maybe I can still marry the two, the environmental lawyer side, where I have knowledge about the law and what kind of impacts there are on the environment, with my love for fashion. And especially seeing statistics saying that the fashion industry has such a huge impact on the environment. So it was a professional aspect that has come together with my personal love, and that's where I am at the moment. One positive that I want to start with almost is that our environmental laws have been drafted in such a good way. They are, they match almost first world countries, often even better. And the fact that we're a developing country, I think, is amazing, because we have these fantastic laws that we can then use to mold our society. And even though we're still growing, I think it's a great starting place. So from a legal perspective, I think people and women can be comforted that we actually have very good laws in place, and that's based on impacts on the environment. So if you have to build a manufacturing warehouse to build clothes, you have to get authorizations that link to water use and to air impacts and soil impacts, and you'll have to do a study essentially to see what impacts you would have. So that's from a manufacturing perspective. And then if you look at labor laws as well, as frustrating as it is sometimes for entrepreneurs, because it's not easy to just hire and fire people, that is really, it's a positive again, because our employment laws protect workers, and that's another big part of sustainability in clothing. It's that workers are protected and looked after, and here we already tick that box quite easily. And also governance is another aspect. I think transparency with brands. And again, I don't think we are like overseas countries who just blatantly lie about things, saying, oh, I'm sustainable, oh, my company cares. I think we are a lot more conservative and honest with our brands and our professionals that we have in the industry. So that's a positive that I think is really important to focus on, because too often I think sustainability is overwhelming and it's cloaked by just more pressure to do the right thing. And I think more and more it's not about doing less bad, but it should be about doing more good. So that's my positive message, at least from a legal perspective. And then sort of things that people might not know, I think it is just the pure impact. You see images and you don't always think about what buying a t-shirt does, and where it starts. And I think it goes from growing of cotton or producing of polyester and a plastic, and it's got such a long supply chain to transport of those items, to making of a textile, to obviously designing and then making your clothes and transporting it again from place to place. So there are a lot of impacts. And again, with the overwhelming nature, I think if people just look at starting small and as simple as buying locally or buying vintage or secondhand, that you are already sustainable in your fashion choices. As much as they are produced somewhere else, they are transported, and just that transport alone has such a big impact on the environment. I think there's always that possibility. Companies will take chances and just try and portray something that they're not. But with that, I think the education and people are becoming so much more knowledgeable in this space. And that's really important. That's something that I really want to drive, is just educating people on what sustainability really is and what your impacts really are. And so you don't just take a company's word for it. Oh, they're sustainable, great, I'll buy that, because it is a great marketing tool, because then you don't feel so bad. You're like, oh, well, they're sustainable, so I will buy this shirt. But you need to dig a bit deeper, and I think it's just giving people the tools to do that digging themselves, and then companies won't be able to take advantage. It's great for smaller brands because marketing is expensive, and it's an opportunity for them to use something simple like an Instagram or a Facebook account to promote their products, and that's a great opportunity, and we've seen that grow businesses. For me personally, I really enjoy seeing videos of clothes, because seeing a stagnant photo, you don't always get an idea of what it's like. So seeing someone twirl around in a dress is just fantastic, and it helps me understand if I should or shouldn't buy something. So there are definitely pros and cons to social media. It's the excitement, the just thinking of getting any kind of gift or present that's new, and it's similarly something that you've worked hard and you can buy something new. And as you say, the psychology behind it, I think they say it releases endorphins, and so we are unfortunately wired. It's a behavioral trait that I think will be difficult to change, but I think we have to try. So it's endorphins and it's exciting, and and I think often I'm even guilty of it. I see a dress and I'm like, oh, if I just have that dress and it's new and I can just wear that dress and I won't have to style it and dig around for other things. And the problem is, there's always a new dress that I think will just simplify my style and my look. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. To be honest, I even struggle. I've bought a few things secondhand, but I'm not fully into it yet. But it's my new challenge to myself. And I think it's, again, just a behavioral, and as you say, it's a mental thing. So my latest way of trying to trick myself into getting into it is just seeing it as almost like a way to hunt for something special. So it's a challenge to how can I find it more exciting. So I think it's that excitement aspect as you have with new clothing. So I'm trying to channel my excitement for something new into trying to find a gem, trying to find maybe something that I saw that I couldn't afford at the time, and now it's secondhand, and it's still in really good condition, so I can wear it. So I think it's in our minds, and that was my thinking for quite a while. I think I bought a dress in my 20s, and at first I was like, ew, someone else wore this, but the dress was so beautiful, and I focused on that, and I just loved it so much that I completely forgot that I actually bought it secondhand. So it really is just a mindset, and I think there'll always be people who just won't get over it, but it's almost like a personal challenge, just like not using plastic straws. From a buying perspective, where you maybe don't have a lot of money to spend in any case, and why should women be prevented from buying something trendy and cute that they can afford just because it's bad for the environment? So it's such a tricky thing to think of, and again, especially in our country, because we don't have tons of money to just throw at expensive clothes. So I think it definitely does limit buying power, or mentally even. And I've struggled with it, just initially thinking, oh, I want to buy this dress, and then I look at the label and I see it's polyester and it's made in China, and I'm like, it's cute, but and it's such, it's hard to go through. So it's definitely limiting. But I think it's just trying again to refocus on like small steps. And so then I will sometimes look for something, it might be polyester, but it's been made locally. And then I sort of check one of my small boxes. So again, I think it comes back to broadening what people think of when they think of sustainability. And so then I feel bad because it's polyester, but it's made locally. So that's okay. So it's limiting, but I think we can broaden those limits in very small ways, just to make it a little bit easier. And even like that fast fashion. So, okay, this is a fast fashion item, but it was made in South Africa, whether it's at Mr. Price or Pick and Pay Clothing, great. That at least is already a step in the right direction. So I think it's just small incremental sort of steps